Morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. Good. All's good here.
Florida's supposed to be 111 today, buddy.
Wow. I mean, yesterday we did get to it feels like 105,
Oh,
but today it's really cooled down. It's supposed to only be in the 80s.
good.
Yeah. I was sitting outside this morning with a cup of coffee and there was a breeze and it was cool and dry, so it was really very nice.
I stopped playing golf in the month of July. It's
Yeah,
just
that makes
not from
sense.
here.
That makes sense.
It's already 88 here in Central Florida.
Well,
It's hot.
Wow.
I'll tell you how hot it's outside my door. 1 minute.
Happy Friday, everybody. How you doing?
Good.
Hi,
Happy.
it's 101. It's
Friday,
101.
happy Friday. 101, holy cow, you win.
Yeah. Where are
Happy
you? Where
Friday.
is 101?
Palm Beach
Arizona?
Gardens, Florida. 101. Hi, Robert.
How are you, sir?
I'm vertical.
You're always positive, my friend.
You know what? If you're not, you have no business being in this world. There's
Yeah.
too much crap going around to make it otherwise. Whoop, I just lost the whole picture. Oh my God. Let me get it back.
All right. Well, you're getting that back. I'm just gonna give everybody sometimes people ask me, where do you come up with your topics for these calls? And we were doing some conversations, both with sellers and with the recruiting team, and it came to me that from a sales perspective, we have so much to offer, and that when we lose a transaction, it's usually over communication style, as opposed to skill set and what we can deliver. And I think the same is true for our recruiting team. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to kind of go into the psychology of selling, and not from a manipulative way, but from an effective way of communicating, right? Who, with your camera on, if you could put your camera on, if you're someplace where that's possible, who has anxiety about you having sales meetings, whether it's our leadership team with recruiting, or you're going on a listing appointment blind? Who has some anxiety about those appointments? Okay, I see Miguel. Terry, you're raising your hand? I can't hear you.
No, absolutely not. The first thing I ever learned about real estate was relax and go in there with a great attitude and good perspective, and don't let real estate eat you up. That, of
Yep.
course, that's what if you're dealing with people that are not in your family, then it's a whole different ball game.
So when you go out for a listing appointment, what else do they call a listing appointment? They call it a listing. Come on, somebody fill in the blank.
Presentation.
Opportunity.
It's
Opportunity.
a listing
Presentation.
opportunity. Most of us have been trained to call it
Conversation.
a presentation. Robert, you've been
Interview.
a student. Interview. Robert, you've been a student for a long time, so you get 5 gold stars. But I think the industry calls it a listing presentation. Okay. And a listing presentation starts you off on the wrong foot. Now, I don't know if the homeowner thinks they're going in for a listing presentation, but they probably feel that way. Has anybody ever had an appointment with a solar salesman, or hopefully you've had life insurance sales? Anybody had one of those experiences that you want to share?
Yeah, this
So,
is Jose. Yeah, it is probably the one of the most unpleasant experiences I've ever had is a solar panel salesman. He was one of those guys that knocked on my door and say, "Hey, we just want to talk for a couple of minutes, talk about this option, solar panel sales." I figured, let me give him a shot, and Yeah, 15 minutes into it, I already regretted the conversation and it lasted about 2 hours.
Yep, and that was a hardcore pitch, right?
Oh, very hardcore.
And that's exactly what we don't want to have. We don't want to have the hardcore pitch. We want to have relationship selling, right? Not presentation selling. Okay. Um, and our industry starts us out with the wrong name. We're going on a listing presentation. All right. It leads us to believe that our job is to go there, and any of you who are from New Jersey and have been in the business for more than 10 years, you might have heard of a company called Weichert.
Yeah,
And
very well.
and Marilyn, what did Weichert do when they went on a listing appointment? Didn't they bring this huge book that took almost the whole kitchen table?
Huge, huge. I used to have to train them how to use that book. You got muscles carrying it around.
But literally, it was probably, 24 inches by 36 inches. I mean, it was like
It was
embarrassing.
big.
And they
Yeah.
said if I went into a condo, I couldn't open it because it wouldn't fit on the
Yeah.
table.
True.
Okay, that was the epitome of presentation. Okay, and
Yeah.
I think what we want to do is we want to have a balanced approach where it becomes a conversation, like Robert said. And if you don't believe what you're saying, um, it's going to be unanimous. I don't care how you practice or you try to script it. If it's not coming from the heart and you don't believe it, people are going to sense that, right? And a lot of us have been successful because we're so authentic and we speak from the heart. And for you, I want to give you some additional strategies. And from those of you who have been trained traditionally to present and to educate and to teach them and show them the way, um, many times that works. It works often a lot better if it's a relationship that's already established. But if it's not an established relationship, um, it's challenged. Okay. And I was talking to a platinum producing agent who's on the verge of doing becoming chairman, which is 500,000 GCI. And I'm always trying to figure out like how can I help somebody with so much talent? And one of the things we started talking about is, had he lost any listing opportunities? And he said that he does fantastic most of the time, but he had lost 3 or 4 this year. And when I was peeling it back, I found that those were the ones that he was referred to from a third party referral source. And they were good listings. They listed many times similar to the cost, the suggested price that he had discussed. Um, but I think he just wasn't able to build relationship value in a single meeting. Okay. And I'm sure looking at everybody who's on camera, I'm sure you all can think of a time when you've had somebody in a sales role that you've purchased from, and at the end of a very brief interaction or a brief transaction, you feel like they were your best friend, and that they've built in trust. Does anybody think of an experience like that, Mr. Garver?
So I have that with a car salesman of all people, who I've been doing business with now for 15 years. And I remember the first time I walked in and I sat down with him, and the conversation was all about me. Tell me about yourself. What do you like doing? You know, what have you driven before? What are you looking for? It was just very personable. And each time that I would subsequently walk into the dealership, he was always up and, "Hi, Robert, how are you? Good to see you. What's going on?" And it was always a fairly personable conversation, um, and then we would sit down and do what we need to do.
So, nice, knowledgeable person, I'm sure, but also supplemented that with the right etiquette and the right style, right?
Right.
So, and I hear that he was asking a lot of questions about you, right? So tell me, Robert, do you need this car for a long distance travel? Whatever he was asking, right? He wasn't selling the attributes of the car nonstop, right?
No,
And
absolutely not. And actually, many, at least that first time in, the questions about me were about me, my personal life, my wife, what we like doing, things like that. So it was really he was trying to build a profile of, what ultimately might be the vehicle that would best serve our lifestyle.
yep, and I can tell you, Robert, I hate buying cars, so I give this guy a lot of credit, right?
Me too.
Because I'm not a car person, and every couple of years we got to go buy a car. Like I'm brushing up on the lingo. I'm like, hey, Robert, that's 60,000 out the door, right? No additional. Like I've learned some of these tricks from people in the auto industry, so that
Right.
there's no sunshine tax or document prep fee. Um, and a couple of things I want everybody to pay attention to, and maybe even write it down. But when you're on an appointment, okay, this is simple math. You have two ears and one mouth, which means that you need to be asking questions and listening twice as much as you're talking, right? I know we feel like we need to express the value that we have, but a lot of times the things that we think are important may not be as important or as significant to our prospect. Would you all agree? Right? Um, and here's something that, I've learned over many, many years is the person asking the questions is the person in charge. Okay. If you go back to when you were in school, the teacher's asking you questions. Who's in charge of the classroom? The teacher is. When we go on an appointment, somehow we feel like we need to, educate, present, and throw a bunch of data at them to show that we're worthy or we're knowledgeable. But there's probably not two buyer or two sellers on the planet that have the exact same requirements, right? Or the exact same communication preference or the exact same belief system. Everybody's unique. And it goes from, not just, hey, are you willing to do anything to prepare the house for the market? Um, what's most important to you? Like, what do you think is most important to, and I'm going to focus on sellers because I think that's probably one of the most valuable conversations we could have. But what's most important to a seller when they're deciding whether or not they're going to transact with us? What do you think?
Commission, money in their pocket. Trust.
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 Cool.
So,
Quality of service.
I'm sorry, what's the last one?
Quality of service.
Quality of service.
So not the most
Um,
money.
so I think a lot of us are we have a underlying belief that netting the most money, charging the lowest fee are amongst the most important. But I think um, in a transaction such as selling a house, I think probably trust, right? Integrity, communication skills, establishing communication style. Yeah, Myra, the overall experience. These are all things that contribute to the experience, right? So we assume falsely that the most important thing is what's the commission rate and what do you say you can sell my house for, right? What's the price that you can sell it for? And there's not one of us that's out there buying the house, right? So what we say and telling them what they want to hear is not meaning that's what it's going to sell for, right? And hopefully it's our competitors that have bought listings by maybe misleading clients to believe their home is worth more. because they don't have the strategy, the courage, or the knowledge to say, hey, you know, if we get this piece wrong, we might pay a very significant price, and it's going to impair the ultimate sales price substantially. Our leadership team, we were talking, about attraction and bringing people into the company. Okay, there's so many gimmicky companies out there that sometimes we get sidetracked with, they charge $50 less a month, or they give a 5% more of a commission split. But I think the reality is, for most of us, if we can help you grow your business, like I did with, I'm going to call him Platinum Troy going to Chairman Troy, okay, our agent, who missed out on 3 of his 4 listing opportunities. This is a 25-year veteran in the real estate business, doing $250,000 a year in commission, got comfortable and didn't have a bulletproof process for meeting people that don't know who he is. And I think if the people knew who he was, they would have hired him. But for the fact that he was using the same strategy he used for the clients that were repeat clients. And I don't know, I'm going to lean into Mr. Garver again. Robert, do you think the approach that the salesman had when you bought the second car was a little bit more relaxed than the first time? You're on mute.
I think that he's very much consistent. Every time that I meet with him, he's always, got the smile, friendly, outgoing, and I always walk out of there feeling like I haven't been taken advantage of.
And I assume probably when you go to upgrade your vehicle that you probably make sure he's working that day or call him on his cell phone, right?
I do. He gave me his cell phone number, and I call him and I make an appointment so that, I don't want to sit in the showroom, you know, having arrived right after he started working with somebody else. Because he does
Right.
take his time with you, with me, and I guess with other clients too. So I made an appointment for this afternoon, and he said, "Great, I've got it all blocked out."
Well, I think if we were to take a look back, maybe not a video recording, but a visual recording of what we think the experience was like, and we were to critique ourselves and see how we can do better, I think that would be incredibly valuable for us. Okay. And when you grow the most, when do you think you grow the most in life and business?
When you make
When you
mistakes.
fail. When you're
When you fail.
challenged.
When you fail, when you make mistakes, right? Um, and the people who grow the fastest are the ones that learn from those mistakes and don't repeat them. Okay. I'm going to go back to the comment. If you've been on these masterminds for a while, you might hear my story about Ruth Brewster, who's in the business over 50 years, owns a small brokerage in New Jersey. She had a run-in with one of our agents, and I was talking to her, and she goes, and mind you, Tommy was in his early 70s. She goes, Tommy, he's a good kid. Been with me for 41 years. But you know what the problem with Tommy is? Who remembers this one? Robert, you know that, right?
Yeah,
What was the problem with Tommy?
He keeps
41
repeating the
times
same
within the
year.
first year.
He repeated the first year 41 times. He never learned, right? And I just want everybody to have an awareness that, when you fail is when you grow. Okay, so don't get discouraged. Don't say, I'm not the best listing agent. I'm better with buyers, right? Don't say, oh, I prefer to just work with people that are in my sphere, or the people that know and trust me. I want to challenge you. I want you all to have an approach that you welcome being able to demonstrate the value that you have in a level playing field, a fair game, right? And if you know what you're saying, you know how to read people, understand the emotions, you you can win so many more times than not. And you don't have to have trickery, gimmickry, none of that. It's all about, basically just being authentic, like Robert's car salesperson. Um, it's
Robert,
not,
winners have reasons and losers have excuses.
yeah. So, it's not about a timeshare sales where you're being manipulated and you feel like you're being forced to do something. It's not about a solar sales, right? It's about somebody's already indicated a desire to transact in the business that we know and love, and we have probably 15 minutes to win the sale, whether the appointment's an hour, 45 minutes, whatever the time frame is. How long is a listing appointment for most of you? If you want to just either unmute or put it in the chat. I'll call on Robert and Ron. I know you do a lot of listing appointments. How long is a listing appointment, Ron?
It usually is an hour. Sometimes it could be longer, depending on all the questions they ask. But the walkthrough usually takes anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. Depends on the house and how big it is, how small it is. I would say 1 hour is pretty much common.
And how about you, Robert Garber? What do you say?
So I think that, if I have an established relationship with the people, we know each other, it could be 40 minutes. If it's someone I haven't met before and I want to get to know them before we really get down to work, it could be an hour and a half.
Okay.
Like Bobby Golden said, I plan 2 hours. It could be 45 minutes, it could be an hour, it could be an hour and a half. But my most
Right.
important thing there is not the price or the commission, it's to continue to build that rapport. So if I, like Robert said, if if I knew them before, great. If I'm just referred to them or they called me on a sign or on a mailer, you gotta mirror what they're giving off, and you need to figure out what they really need. And I said trust before. I don't know if everybody heard that, but to me, all the other things that you mentioned fall under trust, integrity, that whole mindset. It's a decision you have. You wake up, you have the confidence, you go in to what you're going to do that day, and you're going to get them to feel like they trust whatever you're saying and that you have their best interests at hand because you're their advisor. So they don't need to meet with anybody else.
And I'm gonna ask this question. I'm gonna call on a couple people I know that will have great answers. No pressure. What's the purpose of a listing appointment? And I'm going to start with Brian in Scottsdale.
The the purpose is to get the listing. And then it's
Okay.
through that goal is again what we talked about, having building the rapport piece of it, gaining the trust, getting them to a comfortable level. People want to do business with who they're comfortable with. The fact that car salesman scenario you were talking about, people don't like that hard sell attitude.
And Brian, would you ever stretch the truth to get a listing?
Maybe about that much. I'm not going to come up with a bunch of fibs and like if I don't know an answer to a question, I'm not going to pull something out of my back end. I'm going to say, hey, I don't know. Let me get the answer for you.
Right. Well, I will say, you have, even talking to the group, Brian, you have a very authentic demeanor, which I think people would
Thank you.
respond well to. I'm gonna make a comment on your question, on your answer, after I get a couple others. Tony, what's the purpose of the listing appointment? You're on mute.
Yeah. The purpose of the appointment is to get the listing. That's the purpose of it.
Okay. Purpose is to get the listing. I'm going to ask Tony. That's Tony Johnson. Tony Vura, what's the purpose of the listing appointment?
Oh, to see if you can help these people buy or sell a property.
To see if you could help them. Okay. And I'll take one more. I'll go to Lisa Mouser VC. What's the purpose of the listing appointment?
So, well, there's several purposes, I think, but the main thing I agree with Tony is to see how you can help the sellers achieve what they want, and by helping them achieve what they want, you will achieve what you want, and to work out with well, hopefully a signed agreement, if not at the listing, then the next day.
So it has to be, I think, you're getting closer to it has to be a win-win,
Yes.
right?
Rob, could I just add? I think
Yep.
to see if we want to work together, because you may not want to work with all of these sellers. If they have unrealistic expectations, I don't want the listing. It's not going to sell. So to me,
I love that.
It's got to make sense for both me and them.
You're interviewing them, they're interviewing you. You got to
Correct.
make sure they realize you're still interviewing them as well, and make sure. I always like to say that we lead the dance. Once they start to feel they lead the dance, then the terms could be wrong. So then you might want to not take the listing as well. You really got to demonstrate the expertise, the credibility, and all those things. You know, it's you got to make sure the expectations are set correctly, or else it could just be a total waste of time.
You
You know,
gotta
everybody
find-
says find a listing,
You gotta
but
find
find it
the
correctly.
problem. You gotta find the problem. You know, why they want to sell.
And Sharon, sometimes the best outcome is no listing, right?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think our if our mission or our goal for a listing appointment is to get the listing, we might take unrealistic listings. We might take underpriced listings that we regret, like where we don't get paid fairly. Because if somebody says, "Hey, Sharon, I'll give you the listing for 1.5%, and I want to list it 10% more than it's worth, and I want you to do an open house every weekend, and I want you to advertise it in the newspaper." You're like, how do you even advertise in a newspaper? Like, I'd like,
Thanks, but no thanks.
exactly, right?
And I'm sure that there's somebody who has no experience who's desperate for a listing who'll be happy to help you. Good luck with that.
Right.
That
So,
person could be the first of 3 people to sell it.
right. So the point is to decide if it's a good fit for you to work together, right? And in order to do that, you have to be able to ask questions and make decisions, not from commission breath, desperation. So the goal is, it was a trick question. It's not to get the listing. It's to decide if it makes business sense for you to take that on, because there's 2 types of agents that have taken listings that they regret, and then agents that will take listings that they regret because somebody is difficult. And many times those listings that you regret, they're often friends and relatives.
Oh, yeah.
They can be the most difficult, right?
Oh, yes.
So, Robert, just a quick funny line to that. There was an agent I used to work with, and she was a longtime agent, and we were having a conversation in the office about commission rates. And everyone was saying, well, 5%, 6%, 4%. And she said, if it's family and friends, 7%.
Exactly. Especially if you know the ones that are prone to be difficult, Robert.
Right.
But yeah, no, you want to make sure it makes sense. You want to be able to, like, I think some of the most frustrating experiences is when you've lost a piece of business and you were better than the person that got it from you, and it's frustrating. And a lot of times, I'm looking at some of the agents on this call here, and you're so successful, and I'll bet you when you take a listing that was competitive, the competition goes, "Oh, I'll bet you Sharon Flood discounted that listing." They don't know that you created value, right? They just try to offset. And I know you don't discount. I know you value your service, which is why I called you out, because people who lose make excuses. I think Abe made that comment, right?
Winners have reasons, losers have excuses.
Winners have reasons to lose. So when the competition loses to Sharon, they're like, "Oh, well, she must have cut the commission." or she must have, promised them free staging or something. Not that, we need to reevaluate our communication or conversation skills. Buying is a lot about emotion, connection, and perception, as opposed to strictly, fees and prices. Okay. I would bet you more people by a magnitude of 5 to 1 remember a bad experience than the commission that they paid on a transaction. Right? Do you think people remember 5 years later if they paid 5 or 6%, they paid you 2 or 3, or do you think they remember that you didn't return the phone calls, that you didn't communicate well, that it was a real fiasco right before the closing because everything was last minute? Think about it. What do they remember? They remember the experience a lot more than the cost.
Quality of
And
service.
and Robert, do you remember what your first car cost at that dealership, or do you more remember the experience?
Just the experience. I couldn't even tell you what the first car was.
Um, so there's case in point, it doesn't matter. Like, it sounds like you bought at least several cars through the person, so it was a good relationship for both.
Yes.
But we remember the emotion. Um, excellent salespeople can also create a fear of loss when you're talking to them, and the only way you can create a fear of loss is by having balance. Okay, and balance would be, Miguel. Yeah, hey, if we decide to work together, and then you just future cast what the transaction would look like, what the relationship would look like. And you balance the playing field by not saying like, hey, if you pick me, right? If you decide to hire me to list your house, this is what I'll do. And just by changing the language from, hey, Miguel, if we decide to work together, the first step is, right? And this is not trickery, but when you're in a trend, a conversation, and the next step is natural to do business, you need to have a process to complete the transaction without asking for the business. So it might be, hey, Roman, I know you see the value in what we have. If you feel we're a good fit, the next step is we need to order business cards, and then you need to write a letter to your broker to, release your license or whatever it is. Like, it flows naturally, right? And that's a recruiting script. Too many choices freeze people. Too many choices will freeze people. So if you get in the weeds with, this is a topic that I think sometimes puts a little bit of pressure, headwind on our conversations. Hey, Tony, it's up to you to decide how much you're going to compensate the buyer's agent, the agent that brings you the buyer. I recommend, between 2 and 3%. How do you address that at an upfront listing appointment?
Oh, especially now with this agency there. It's my fact I was talking to other people yesterday, and I guess most of the people what they do is they were telling me yesterday that what they do is that they say, hey, my commission is this. Doesn't mean that you don't have to pay the other agent. It doesn't mean that the other agent is gonna want you to pay it. We're just gonna want you to know that it's gonna be negotiable. Whatever the offer is, whatever they want, we'll see how you want to handle that, how you want to respond to that. I said, okay. I guess that's what they're doing now.
So, is there anyone in the business less than 3 years on the call, selling business, that's got your camera on? No, so we've all been in the business for a while. So it's hard to change
I am
our habits.
less than 3 years.
You're less than 3 years?
Mhm.
Okay, Olina. So For you, it might be easier if you decide to just say, hey, if you're talking to me, hey, Rob, my fee for listing your property, marketing it, helping get it ready, giving you all the feedback is 3%. And what I would advise, or I want to give you options, you can decide to compensate other brokers by putting out a fixed amount, or you can just say, hey, when you submit your offer, put your request for compensation in it. And you sign the listing at 3%. When these offers come in, they're going to come in with different commission requests. And then you can decide, take a look at the entirety of the offer, right?
Would
Because
it be too confusing for them? Would it be easier for just say, hey, it's 4% and we'll split, I'll pay half. It's just to, make them less worried about the process at the end when the offer comes.
who's transitioned to I mean, I want to just get from your peers, who's transitioned to just negotiating your commission at the listing appointment as opposed to presetting the commission for the buyer's agent?
I certainly have.
Okay, so you have.
Yeah,
So you,
because our fiduciary responsibility is to the client that we represent. And so if I'm just gonna have them set up an arbitrary number that they're definitely willing to pay out, then I don't feel that I'm doing my fiduciary responsibility. And by that same token, there could come a time in the market where, gosh, maybe you need to be willing to consider a 4% out on the other side if the market swings the other way. But I do I just sort of explain to them that you're going to receive offers that have varying amounts of compensation requests. It could be zero and the buyer's taking it all on, or it could be 3% or more. And so we need to be prepared for that. But one thing I would love to hear from you, Rob, is any thoughts on sometimes, well, I want to also make sure that I'm negotiating how I work if I also have the buyer or if there's an unrepresented buyer. So I take a 6% listing, for example, but how much we're going to pay out is 0 to 3%. And then unless I have the buyer, then I have a set amount for that. And then I have a little addendum that basically says if they don't pay out that other 3%, they get to keep it. I'm not keeping the whole thing if I'm not on the other side. So curious how other people handle that.
so you can, yeah, let me just get a clarification. So when you meet with me to list my property, you're saying your fee is 3%. You're saying that we're going to tell cooperative agents that put the request for what you'd like to get paid, and we'll respond. We'll entertain, the commission. But then you talked about how do you address if you sell it yourself, and what did you say you offer or you do?
So for me, I negotiated. I said, if I'm going to represent an unrepresented buyer, and so that means I'm still representing you, but this person is unrepresented, then my fee is this. I let them know that up front so that we don't have that issue. So for me, it's another 1.5%. Still to only represent the seller, but I'm going to represent, that means I've got to keep this transaction on track. And they don't usually have a problem with it because it's still lower than potentially paying 6% out. So I do negotiate that at the listing time.
And what if you have a buyer, that's in your database that decides they want to buy it, that you could have sold another house to? What's the expectation to me as a seller?
For me, I ask for 2% from the seller, and I talk about that at the listing. And once we're aligned and you've decided that I'm the listing agent for you, then we talk about these fees. So I would like to have 2%. And then depends on how much I'm into that buyer, sometimes that buyer might pay me the other 0.5% for the 2.5 is kind of my in my own head, my minimum. And then I just haven't had any problems with it, doing it that way.
So, if I had somebody that was selling and they're also buying through me, I'd say, look, at my fee to represent you as a buyer is 3%. And whatever your true experience is, 80% of the time I'm able to get the seller to pay that. That's what the buyer agency agreement is saying. And you know what, if I am selling your house and a buyer is looking for compensation working through me, I would agree to do it for 2.5 or 2%, right? And
Very
you
much
say what
so.
you're willing to do it for. I think that's more than fair. I think it's excellent observation. Um,
I like that too. I would like to offer my listing, the seller, for example, listed for 4% commission, and then if I bring a buyer myself, if I find my own buyer, I will reduce it to 3% commission. If, for example, you as an owner will find a buyer yourself, then I will reduce it even more.
so, Alina, how long have you been in the business?
1 year.
1 year. I'm going to just make a suggestion. When we start talking a little bit too much about compensation, you know what they focus on? Compensation.
Start counting, yeah.
Right. If we if we focus on, hey, if I do this, then if I do it myself, and then if it's like, if you start talking about it 3 times, then the buyer's going to be thinking about it. If, you know, if Tony Vero goes and says, hey, you know, my fee is 3%. If I sell it myself, I know we've already negotiated a 3% buyer commission. I'm going to reduce that to 2% if I'm representing both sides. And basically, it's more like a fact, not a negotiable item, right? Um, you know, when you go to the doctor's office, most of us don't negotiate what the cost of a knee replacement is. When you go to an accountant, now there's some of you that do. When you go to an accountant and they give you an engagement letter, it's, you know, 85 to $150 an hour. Most of us just sign it. Um, because we just believe that that's the going rate. If we start talking, if my accountant's like, hey, you know what? I used to charge $125 an hour, but now with inflation, I'm charging 135. Like, what would your first reaction be, David Holler? What would you think?
I'm still shaking my head because obviously Alina's now my agent with you. I think maybe somebody taught her the wrong way. We should never be talking about 4% listings in Florida. I'm sorry. I'm stuck on that right now. We got to have a conversation about that. Blows my mind. I think that if you show value, you walk in there and you own it. I told you, I always say this every call. So the last thing I talk about is how much I charge. I believe the buyer's agent deserves to get paid. Uh, every state where we practice in, guys, is different. I understand things are totally different in New Jersey. I hear it every day from our referral partners and our agents in our company. But guys, everybody, you need to stop giving away before you start anything. You know, like own, be confident in what you bring to the table. Um, I have agents that are getting 7% consistently in this market. They're taking home 4% as a listing agent. That means that if you make $500,000, making $100,000 of it more because you didn't give up. So, I mean, be very, very careful with, like he's saying, what you're willing to just give up. And I always keep it for the last. You
I
build rapport.
understand, but if you were in business only starting, they don't see your experience. You
No,
can't
we're
tell
gonna work
if
on that, Alina. I promise this is so important to me because I don't want to see you let a lot of leave money on the table. I want you to have the confidence when you're at an appointment that you walk out of there knowing you're going to give them such an experience that you're worth all that money and more. Um, you know, it's I hear just give it away to get the business.
So,
I'm not concerned if you have 100 deals here next year. I want to make sure you learn to do it the right way, and it's not giving away all the commission.
right. So, Alina, I'm gonna conclude, and you know, the first year is the hardest. So, congratulations. I think 2/3 of your peers or greater are already out of the business. Big round of applause to you. What I would probably do is when I'm starting out, I would probably share my first listing or two with somebody with more experience and see how they handle it. And then you can learn from 10, 20, 30 years of experience. Um, Now, you might get 1.5% instead of 2, but you're going to get an education in many cases. And I'm not saying that you have to do this, but I'm just giving you some diversity of options, right? And I'm coming back to you, Wilson. I didn't forget about you. Um, but Dave, you're passionate about defending what you're paid, and some of the best agents in this business on paper seem to be overpaid. But we all have the same playing field that we start with. And if you can communicate better, you can demonstrate some advanced efficiencies, communication skills, you're going to make a boatload of money and you're going to have a trail of satisfied clients that's going to propel you to even more success the following year. Wilson, I'm going to you.
Yeah, just a couple things to add. One thing I love that David said was, and I do the exact same thing, is the commission is at the end of it. One of my favorite things to do is not even bring up the commission, because the value that I've provided within my listing presentation and every interaction that we have, if I can get a client to say, "Oh, what do you charge, by the way? We never discussed that." My bad. Yeah, I charge 6%. 3 to me, 3 to the listing agent, because, and it always ends with a, "Oh, okay, good. Thanks for letting me know." If we can make it to a 15 to 30-second conversation, it's a win every single time. And I will say one of the most important things that I've learned about the Remax brand is experience is not the years in the business. Experience is the class of people you have around you, the learning that you have done, and what you bring to the table as an agent counts for experience. It's just not the years on your lapel pin. How many 30-year agents do we know that we wish we did business because they are bringing down the quality of who we are as agents? It's not years in the business, it's who you are.
Okay, so Wilson, I picked up something good from what you said, and what I picked up is, if you emphasize it more, it becomes more significant. Here's another cardinal sin when selling. Okay, if somebody says, and let me see here. I'm gonna see. Mark Feingold's not on, are you, Mark? Okay. Not because I'm calling him out on it, but hang on. So when you say, hey, Wilson goes and says, hey, my commission is 3%, and I recommend we offer out 3%. There's a percentage of those clients that go, boy, that's a lot of money, Wilson. Wilson, I think I've seen lower commissions. How do you answer that, Wilson? What do you personally say? I don't know. It looks like Wilson might have froze. I'll go to Brian, who's got the perfect. Brian, who's got the perfect tonality. If they say, Brian, we really want to work with you, but wow, 3% on the listing side seems high.
I'm sorry, Robert.
So I had to mute everybody. So Brian, if your appointment's going stellar, right? Then you start to talk about what the fee is, right? And you're listing, what's the highest price home you listed the last 3 years?
The last 3 years was 1.250.
So 1.250, and do you ever charge 3%?
Most of the time.
Okay, great. So if you say my fee is 3%, and then they go, wow, that's like $40,000. That's a lot of money, Brian. How do you respond to that?
I'll say, well, it's relative. You're going to get, I've already explained, at this point, I already have good rapport, right? We've gone through the whole listing presentation, interview process. So they feel super, super comfortable with me. And so now at that point, I'm going to say, well, that's experience. So you can pay for a lot of experience, or you can pay for a little bit of experience. It's, and then it's kind of, I'll use a scenario. If everybody's ever heard the story about the guy that went into the factory, the machine wasn't working, and he went in there, they kind of went through, the guy hit the machine in a couple different spots. Opened up a little panel, made a little adjustment, the machine started working. The guy sent a bill for, $10,000. And they're like, why are you 10,000? You were there for like 15 minutes. And the guy goes, well, it's experience. It's knowing what
No,
to
you didn't
do
know
it,
what to hit.
versus just doing anything. So I try to really push back on, since I built the rapport, now it's about experience and what we can bring to the table, as opposed to, we're not buying the listing, we're not um
So,
overprice the house.
so Brian, would you go into that with a client, or are you just kind of giving us insight into how you think about it?
No, I will literally use that example if there is any kickback on why I charge what I charge.
Okay.
And then people are, and most people just start shaking their head like, well, yeah, I get that.
So, here's an alternative. You may like it, you may not, Brian.
Right on.
So how about this? So other than the fee, is there anything else that would stop us from doing business together?
Great question.
And then it would be, so Brian, when would you like to get it on the market? And then you push the listing paperwork in front of them. And I can't think of a time it's ever come back to me. But here's what I can think of, Brian. When I was younger and I was trying to help agents, I was out there with the best damn agent. They had the best technology, and I was talking to somebody who wanted a 2% listing, and we were going for 3. And he's like, boy, that's a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, but we do drone photography. We syndicate it to 52,000, whatever the number of websites is, we have, 19 years experience. We sell our listings for, 2.2% higher than the competition. And then the homeowner goes, yeah, well, so did Jack from Keller Williams. He does the same thing. He does all that same stuff. Can you match that rate? And I'm like, you know what? I can't prove that Jack can't do it. All I can do is prove that I can, right? So when you get in the weeds there, sometimes, and it's not trickery, sometimes it's like, hey, Brian, other than the fee, is there anything else are there any other questions that you have? Hey, if you still think we're a good fit to work together, when do you want to do the first open house? Right? And sometimes I'll give you a pushback, but I was on one with Mark Feingold where it seemed like 5 minutes when they're like, boy, that's a lot of that's a $60,000 commission. That's a lot of money. I didn't say a word because I knew if I was talking, I was losing. And I just came back and I said, hey, do you want to get this on the market next weekend or the first weekend in September?
So it's not
no.
really, just don't really address it directly, just ask the question. Is there anything else other than, or are you ready to get going?
But when you're trying to, and Brian, I love the analogy when you're trying to do that. Um, and if somebody says, boy, you guys are really overpaid, if you sell this house in less than a month, you're making $42,000, Brian, right? And, I know that, that's because of the value I add. And say, Brian, the average real estate professional makes under $50,000. If you want to get, if you want to get the best service, let's talk about the outcome, not the fee. And if you do it with confidence, like people focus on what you talk about. If you talk about, hey, my fee is 2.5%. If I sell it myself, it's 2 and whatnot. Then everybody's like zoning in on, hey, what's the commission rate?
Right.
Right? If you take Sharon Flood's approach and say, hey, it doesn't matter what the fee is. First, we need to decide if we're a good fit to work together, right? And then that kind of levels the playing field because, I know everybody on this call would not take a bad listing. It's just a matter of how bad it is, right? So some of us might take a listing for 800,000 that's 50,000 overpriced. Some might take one that's 100,000. Some might take one that's 150, but nobody's going to take a listing that's 400,000 overpriced because it's not going to end well. Okay? And, if you get a sense somebody's going to be difficult and they're going to take a lot of your time and, you know, anxiety and maybe at the end of the day give you a bad review, it's not worth it.
Right.
It's just not worth it. Um,
You know, Rob, let me just interject this. It depends on the quality and it depends on your presentation, how strong it is. You know, I never get into numbers until after my presentation. So when I do my visuals and we do our presentation, they see the quality, they see the experience, they know that they can trust me. And when it comes to the numbers, I pretty much do a net sheet for them and I show them all the numbers. So what they have to pay out at closing. And I watch their expressions. If they go, well, we had Joe Schmo from XYZ Realty said he would do it for 5%. You know, I pretty much say, well, commissions are negotiable. And then I could say, well, who would you rather work with? Would you rather work with somebody from XYZ Realty? Would you rather work with Remax and my team? And I give them that decision. And usually I don't really have too much pushback on getting 5 or 6%. Sometimes you have to discount a little bit if you can, if we sell it ourselves. But that's pretty much what I do. It's just a quality, and your presentation has to be very strong. If you have a strong presentation, you should have no problem getting the number you need to get.
Excuse
Can
me.
I ask a
This is Ezekiel from Remax in Fort Lee. Hi guys. A lot of times there's a classic line also, and they say the other agent is going to do it for X amount. You always tell them, well, this is what I say sometimes is, well, if they're not willing to stand up for their commission, how strong are they going to be on the sale of a low ball, offer on your property? So that's kind of a tactic that sometimes, I use and it works. So, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, I think what it is when you always have an answer to an objection, they're gonna feel confident working with you. So anything that they throw at you, you're gonna have something to hit them back with. So if you have that in your back pocket, it always helps.
I will back that up, saying I'm gonna sign in to get photos for a listing. That they asked me to reduce my commission on. I said no, stuck to my guns. And the husband called me and said, we're going with you because you're the only one that wouldn't reduce your commission.
Exactly.
So I backed that up completely.
oh,
Rob?
thanks for sharing. Ezekiel, I know you're not super brand new, but welcome to Remax Select. And was that Terry?
Yes. One of the main things in the past 5 years or so is, well, Joe Blow is charging the same commission, but he's got a whole team of people, and you're just going to be one person. And I try to explain to them, well, the person that you spoke to on the listing appointment is the last time you're going to see him. And the rest of his team will handle everything else. So if that's the way you want your home to be shown, but that's the big thing. They think, oh, the more the merrier, the more people, the more exposure, the more service I'm getting. That's a big objection to get around.
You want
So
300 Spartans or 10,000 Persians?
So, Terry, one thing that I think we don't do well as an industry, I think we focus on like the comps. We try to be an appraiser. We try to, be an influencer on price. But I think that part of selling is also storytelling, right? And nobody has more stories than you, Terry, and talking about how you took this transaction and here's what the outcome was. Showing them, hey, you know what, you know, Drew and Angela, they were told to list it at 1,000,002. We listed it at 1,099,000 and we got them 1,350,000. Do you have any idea how that happened, Terry? Right, and then you show them how the competition drives it up, right? And say, that's why, I'm probably the best bargain that you can get. Right. And having that confidence. I mean, this is all about selling, not telling. but I also think part of selling without telling is, giving them a case study. If you have something relevant in the neighborhood the past 12 months, you give them here's something that happened. Here's the process, right? They listed it here. We had multiple offers. We had highest and best by this day. We got them this amount, and this is how I showed my value. And, 2/3 to 9/10 of you are selling your listings for a higher price than the competition, yet you don't share that secret, right? Who knows what their list to sale price is compared to the rest of their market? And if you don't, that's something that, hey, you know what? I really appreciate that you brought that up, that the commission rate up, but you know, I just wanted to share with you that in Mountain Lakes, I sell my listings for 2.2% above ask price, and of the rest of the listings that sold in Mountain Lakes, they were going for 99.4. It's almost a 3% difference. So I just wanted to share with you how I add value to the process. Like, would that not shut up a 0.5% in commission if that's true? And it's just a little bit of homework that you just need to do to show how valuable you are. All right, I can't believe it. So we're coming to the end already, but I hope you got a little something out of this, and maybe we could, ask better questions and, just be a little bit more confident, not arrogant in the way that we communicate, and balance the transaction.
And for the newer agents that are having difficulty explaining their value, I mean, I think you should come into the office and find somebody to role play with that's doing it every day and that's winning their 6% commissions and that are selling them, because role playing is very valuable, and I think people forget about it. And it'll help out a lot the next time you have a listing and presentation.
Bobby Golden, you'll have the last word.
All right, thanks. I just want to share a little dialogue. So this has gotten me out of this commission discussion almost 100% of the time. I don't know if it applies to the Florida or Arizona market, but in Middlesex County in New Jersey, I would be sitting with a homeowner and they're questioning me on the commission. I explained to them, I said, listen, a lot of people don't realize this, but I don't get paid until we close. So statistically speaking, it's going to take 30 days for your house to go under contract. And then it's approximately another 60-day time frame from there. So right now we're looking at anywhere from 8, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, if not longer, before I get paid. So if you look at the commission, and I understand it's a big number, I understand 100%, you divide it by the 12 weeks or the 16 weeks, here's how much I'm making per week, which I have to get out taxes, pay expenses, and all these other things. So Mr. Homeowner, so Rob, I'm looking at you. So I would say to you, Rob, here's what I want you to do. I want you to save your paychecks for the next 12 weeks, 16 weeks. Don't cash them. Don't cash them. See if you can live on that. That's exactly what I do. And yes, I make a big check again, but the reason I have a good career and a good business here is because I sell a lot of homes. One sale does not pay my bills for the year. And when I say that to somebody, when I say, don't cash your checks for the next 12 to 16 weeks, almost every single one of them goes, you know what, I never thought of it like that. You're right, Bobby, no problem.
So, and I think that strategy works best, Bobby, because you're comfortable with it. I think a lot of other people could fumble that one, but I commend you on your way of breaking that down. So, everybody, instead of go get one listing, go get 2 this weekend. And, Olina or anybody else, if you have a listing opportunity and you want to, bring a peer with you, share that listing, you'll not only probably make virtually the same amount of money, but even more importantly, you'll learn some other styles and some skills that might take you, 3 to 5 years to do on your own by observing somebody. I mean, I think I've learned so much by trying to help this fantastic group, and in the process, my biggest gift is I learned from all of you. and then I'm a sharer. So take 2 listings this weekend, charge what you're worth, and I hope this helps just a little bit. Take care, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much, Rob.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.